Hello, everyone. We're going to take a look at the weird thing in the Bible about women and men and hats in church. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. So, Paul is, verse 3. I want you to realize that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is man. And the head of Christ is God. Every man who prays or prophesies with his head uncovered dishonors his head. These are some weird verses. I'm gonna try to close the gap of weirdness a little bit. I don't think I'm going to be successful. I'm just gonna try. But listen to the weirdness. But every woman who prays or prophesies with her head uncovered dishonors her head. It is the same as her having her head shaved. For if a woman does not cover her head, she might as well have her hair cut off. But if it is a disgrace for a woman to have her hair cut off or her head shaved, then she should cover her head. A man ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God. But a woman is the glory of man. For man did not come from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man. It is for this reason that a woman ought to have authority over her own head, because of the angels. Nevertheless, in the Lord, woman is not independent of man, nor is man independent of woman. For as woman came from man, so also man is born of woman. But everything comes from God. Judge for yourselves. Is it proper for a woman to pray to God with her head uncovered? Does not the very nature of things teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a disgrace to him, but if a woman has long hair, it is her glory? For long hair is given to her as a covering. If anyone wants to be contentious about this, we have no other practice, nor do the churches of God. So, there's a basic rule of biblical interpretation. The Bible does not gain new meaning over the 2,000 years since it was written, or even longer. Okay, for some of the books. So, it's not going to mean anything now that it didn't mean then. So you have to understand what it meant then. And it's not written to you. It's not written to me. It's written to the church in Corinth. Then, 2,000 years removed. God oversaw that it means things for us, that it was for us, even though it was not written to us. But it can't mean anything for us that it didn't mean for them. In other words, there's a Greek word. The New Testament was written in Greek, and the Greek word is dunamis. And dunamis, this is the classic example to teach this point. Dunamis means powerful, or power. It means power. So dunamis is where our word dynamite comes from. And so some people will say, well, dynamite's explosive. So when Jesus told them you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, that means an explosive power. And no, they didn't have dynamite. They didn't have any explosives in ancient Greek times. So when they said dunamis, they didn't mean it in the sense that we use the word dynamite. But when the guy, whoever it was, I don't know who it was, invented dynamite, I think it's Alfred Nobel. I could be wrong. And when the guy invented dynamite, then he named it after the Greek word for power. So he kind of filled it with a new explosive meaning, but didn't have that then. So it can't mean that to us now. The Holy Spirit can't give us explosive power now because it didn't mean that then. So the issue is, well, what was going on then? There were issues that were common and normal in the ancient world that we miss because we're so far removed, but it would have been just everyday business for them. So, just like today, an example would be something like if I say liberal or conservative, or I say abortion, or I say gay rights, or I say, something like Trump or Hillary. Of course, this video will probably exist long after they're relevant, unless something happens. You could go back in the past. I could say Clinton and Bob Dole. When they ran against one another. Bob Dole, my fellow American, Bill Clinton. Or George Bush. And Al Gore. And that kind of thing. Global warming. Whatever. The internet. These are things that I can just say one or two words, and it'll immediately ring for you. The problem is the stuff that ring back then and rang back then is not they're going to ring for us now. So these Corinthians were Greek. They spoke Greek. Greek was their native language. They grew up Greek, and they had become Christians. And there is a word that there is a reason that the word for church was ecclesia, which means called out ones. Becoming a Christian was an act of treason. Not so much in Paul's day, because Paul was too new for anyone to even have beef, although they had beef pretty quick. But like later on, this is how they did baptisms in the early church. You would turn towards the temples that you were raised under the Greek and Roman gods, pronounce a curse, then the preacher of the church would do like an exorcism over you to get that out of you. You turn towards the church, you bow down and kiss. Okay? They take you to a river, alright? You're going to take your old nasty clothes off, go into the river completely naked, and they'll baptize you. You come back out, and they put new clothes on you. It was one of the main criticisms that people made against Christianity in Roman times and in the Greek and Roman world was that it's treasonous. It's sedition. It's you're breaking the laws of your customs of your people. You're going against everything you were raised to believe. You're violating what this nation stands for. You are a traitor to everything by becoming a Christian. I got some Minute Maid lemonade today. Anyway, so the point is, we need to grapple with like what these people were coming out of, because like you gotta understand, like their grandma, their grandpa, their aunt and the uncle, everyone they know, the 50-year-old guy at the hardware store, their mom and dad, everyone all their life had believed this Greek thing. Christianity was the new idea. And that's one thing that people don't understand about homosexuality. In ancient Egypt, in the Bronze Age, in ancient Babylon, Canaan, Phoenicia, that region, Greece, Rome, homosexuality was normal. And in Greece, it was actually considered the highest form of love. We'll get into that. But this Christian idea of heterosexuality being, what is right and proper, is actually new. It replaced previous ideas. So let's just look at the Greek myth, the Greek story for the creation of woman. All right, as usual, it involves Zeus and some other gods, and they mad at each other. So Zeus creates humans. I think the purpose of them was just to worship the gods. Not like in Babylon. In Babylon, the humans were created to be slaves of the gods, to do work that the gods complained to Marduk that they didn't want to have to do. But for Zeus, the humans were created to worship the gods, and he tried 3 times until he got the type of humans who were just right, and he had to, I think he had to kill that whole race because they sucked, and then the next one, but they were all male. There were no females. In fact, the Greek word for male and the Greek word for just virtuous, great, lift up, awesome thing, are, and I forget what the word for male is, but the word for man is anthropos. And then if you look at, they're connected, but if you look at the Greek word for naked, gim, and the Greek word for woman is gune, and for female is gin, or gim. So gim means naked. Gin means female. So that's where we get our word gynecology, or we get our word misogyny, female. So so Prometheus is this other god, and he wants the humans to the male only humans, to advance in knowledge and ability. All right. It's not that there's no females in all of creation, There are tons of female goddesses, but there's no female humans. Um, and so, anyway, Prometheus wants the humans to like advance in technology and understanding, and so he gives them fire. Um, and Zeus doesn't like that at all. He's unhappy. He wants the humans to stay as they are, so he takes the fire away. So Prometheus is sneaky, and he sneaks the fire back to the humans. And so now Zeus is like really upset. And so he does something rather nasty. Well, for one thing, he chains Prometheus to a rock in Tartarus where eagles come and eat his flesh, but because he's a god, he can't die, so he just regenerates or whatever. And that's not very nice. But he had to punish him somehow. And the way things went down with Prometheus makes you understand, like, well, most of the Greek stories involve passive aggression, because when they involved aggression, it was always dire consequences, and Zeus tended to win. But most of the time, Hera, Zeus, Athena, that it would Ares, it would be like, or what's the guy, Apollo and Hyacinth. Ooh, bad story, right? And Zephyr, but like they would be passive aggressive, and so that like you couldn't ever really point the finger at someone and actually prove that they did something wrong. So you never actually go all out. But Prometheus and Zeus is one of those stories where like Zeus kind of went all out, and Prometheus changed the rock forever. But also Zeus wanted to make sure that humans don't become intelligent. So instead of taking the fire away again, he created what he called the beautiful Kakon. I don't know the word for beautiful, but Kakon means evil. It means bad. He created the first woman. Her name was Pandora. Okay? And so Pandora was given a jar full of every evil thing. Disease, war, famine, suffering, poverty, you name it. Depression, worry, sadness, death, blah, blah, blah. I think they would have died anyways. But every horrible thing in life. And she's also created as the beautiful evil, because what Zeus believed was that the idea was that the beauty of woman would take away the humanity of the man and turn him into an animal. So this is like, you can see this in Greek art, in their statues. They would always this is very explicit, they would always, their art would always have the man with a very small penis. Because, I don't know if you've seen two animals, they tend to not make the connection sometimes. And, but they'll go at it anyway because they're kind of dumb. They're animals, and they have really big, protruding parts of their body, and they can't make the connection still. So the idea for the Greeks was that I am a man, I am intelligent, and I don't need, to look like a monkey, to do what I have to do. And women were created by Zeus to like take away man's intelligence with how good they look. So that's what the Greeks believed. And that's what the Corinthians had believed all their life, and that's all they've been raised to believe. And here comes this guy Paul, and you want to know what happened to those Greek beliefs? That guy Paul happened to those Greek beliefs. It's a Christian nation today. But in their day, like, here's what Plato said. Okay, platonic love, not plutonic love, like the way some people write it. I don't know what is up with some people. Platonic love, like Plato. Love between two men is love between equals. And it's the highest form of love. Okay? Let's look at the way of life that they had. In ancient Sparta, okay, the Spartans, what they did is they conquered this neighboring kingdom called the Messenians. The Messenians outnumbered them 10-1. So the Spartans said, we got to get our junk together and be like the military master overlords of all ever, or because they outnumber us. So we have to, like, this is the only way we'll be able to like maintain our and they kept the Messenians as like basically a slave race, second class citizens and then the Spartans were just warriors. So all the boys had to go join the military at like 8 or something or 6 or I don't know. When at age 20 you were finally like graduated and you were assigned your squad of dudes and you stay with those dudes for your military career. Weddings were arranged by families. So you didn't pick your wife and she didn't pick you. Okay? This is the Spartan wedding ceremony. Okay? I just want you to understand how anti-women the Corinthians and the Athenians and the Romans would have been. That's why I'm pointing this out. The Spartan soldier was expected to sneak out of his barracks without being caught or seen under the cover of darkness, sneak into her bedroom, lay with her, and sneak out without anyone knowing. And then they were married. And then he would go, and that was how they would make Spartan babies. And of course the Spartans would throw away the babies that were weaker and keep the ones that were stronger, famously, or healthier looking. And they lived almost as like two societies. And that's just Sparta. Alright? Athens. The Athenians did things differently. They had the man-boy love thing. Okay, so like they would middle school age boys would go to these parties with 50-year-old men there who had had raised their sons by this time and mingle. And hopefully, one of these men would, a well-to-do one and a smart one, 50-year-old man would come by and he would, the boy would get accepted and asked to become his special student. And so they would go into the woods for 2 years and he would be taught the ways of manhood. And some people may need to correct me if I'm wrong, but like the word for the older man was penetrator, and the word for the younger boy was penetrated. Not to be outdone, the women were gay too. That's where our word lesbian comes from, the island of Lesbos, and the poet Sappho and all her lesbian love poetry. But the point I'm making is that the Greeks believed that women were a bad thing, and that a woman really needed to become more like a man. And women kind of looked to Athena, the daughter of Zeus. And when Zeus tried his best to avoid having a girl, especially with the Mother Earth, Gaia, well, not Gaia, Gaia, where geology comes from. But they didn't have the J sound because that's a German thing or an English thing. Okay, so but anyway, I forgot how it went, but like somehow Zeus couldn't. He started having this headache. He had avoided, I think, having sex with Gaia, but somehow he had too much contact with her, and it got him. Zeus got pregnant with Athena, and she like popped out of his head. The mighty warrior woman, fully clothed with all of her armor on, and she's the goddess of like being smart, and warrior, mighty goddess, because she come out of his head, and wisdom and all that. So all of your know-it-alls pray to Athena, right? And Athena had Nike, right? Nike was her consort, who was the goddess of winning and being awesome. But anyway, what would happen was, oh, well, what I was saying was that the Romans didn't, value women. For example, what I was talking about with Athena is women were expected to go like lift weights and be buff, like the men, and they went to these places called gymnasiums, and they would do things. It was called gymnasia, which means to exercise naked. Remember gym, and so the Greeks invented the idea of working out. Before them, people worked out, but they did it just to get for like war and like getting better at killing people. So the Greeks said, we're going to work out completely naked with no weapons, no wooden swords, no spears. Like, we're not training to kill people. We're just training for the physical benefits. And they would do like what we consider weightlifting, and they would do like what we think of as gymnastics. They did that too, the flips and stuff. They didn't do any cardio, I guess, because back then you didn't need that. And then some gyms had running water showers. Other ones didn't. Most of them didn't. You would get a massage from a slave because 1/3 of the empire was slaves. Although slaves could move up, and there were all kinds of opportunities for slaves. Um, and then you would cover yourself with olive oil and scrape it off. And then the the really big sports stars would sell their olive oil to rich women, and the rich women would rub it on. They wanted that, the gladiator sweat on their body. And the Romans hated the barbarians, which would be like our English ancestors, because one thing the barbarians did that the Romans hated was they didn't all that olive oil and all that. They didn't do any of that. They rubbed themselves down with bear fat, and they lived in the woods and raised pigs. Anyway, so one Roman, I don't know, guy who tells people how to live their life guy, he literally came up with a schedule for like the proper life for a fine young Roman man, or just any Roman man. You were to have a slave girl and have sex with her 5 times a day at regular intervals, solely to suppress your passions for her. And then you could pursue your platonic relationship, because the idea was that the platonic relationship was based on a real relationship based on the person's personality, because women have no personality. They're curious and stupid. The Greek society was misogynist, and the idea was that Pandora, the first woman, was like stupid, and because she was so stupid, she couldn't help but open that box or that jar and let all the evils out. And then she did everything she could to close it, and she was only able to keep one evil in, and that evil was hope. And you say, well, how is hope an evil? But then sometimes when there is no hope, then hope is a bad thing, right? And so that would the interplay of thinking about weird ideas and like philosophy and stuff like that. The Greeks love that. Philosophy is a Greek word, phileo sophia. I love wisdom. Okay, but the Greeks had this sense that the power of women to look good controlled you. And I mean, there is some truth to that, I guess. For example, I'll give personal. Okay. There are 7 females who I have seen in my life that, like, I actually remember the first time I saw them because of how good they looked. I think 5 of those times I remember it for like there was something else, other reason why I remember it, other than just like, like for example, one time it was like one of my friend's girlfriend, and he'd been talking about her all the time, and I finally see her for the first time. Then like I also would remember it because that you're, I was wondering who this person was he talked about all the time, but also she was very pretty, But you remember that. But there were 2 that like I don't know who they were. I just see this person. I'm like, and I went through the same. No, I'm not gonna say who it was. I went through the same mental process each time. You're just like, and then like you immediately try to find something wrong with the way she looks to gain control because you feel very powerless. Although I think women do kind of have a tendency to overstate their power. I had a customer today, and my customers don't try to get out of paying me as much as they try to get bumped up in the schedule of not having to wait like everyone else on their thing. And this girl, she comes out there, this woman, and it's like she's wearing like this see-through top thing, and I think she thought because she's wearing the see-through top thing, then I'm gonna do all this stuff, and she's just gonna expect me to do it, even though, other customers are waiting patiently. I don't know what she was thinking, but yeah. But there is a sense in which, for a man and for for someone like me, a male, for, other males out there, I'm sure, it's controlling. And so the Greeks had that. That's what I'm trying to get across. The Greeks had that sense of that. There was a goddess of sex, and they were terrified of her, Aphrodite. Her son His name Cupid in Latin, but in Greek his name is Eros, where our word erotic comes from. And they were terrified. Like there's stories of like human males and like, oh, she'll transform into a woman and she'll be like, oh, have sex with me. And he's like, oh, you're way too pretty. You're probably a goddess. And she's like, oh no, I promise I'm not. Yeah. And he's like, you're probably a goddess. You'll probably kill me. And he's like, oh no, I promise I'm not. And so then like he lays with her anyways, and like then she turns back into Aphrodite, and he's like, oh no, and then she kills him. You know. So there was that sense of dread that the beauty of a woman will take away your intelligence. That's why they all said that's what happened to Alexander. He shied when he got into Persia. The Persian women were too good looking, and he shied away from his gay relationship in his life, his platonic commitment, and started, getting filled with physical passions, because the Greeks had this distinction between mental and physical. And that you should be a philosopher, a lover of wisdom, someone who focuses on the idea of a platonic realm of the logos, the word is what they called it. It was their important concept, the logos. So when you read the New Testament and it says the logos of God, it means the word of God, but they're referencing that Greek idea of this world of ideas that's separated from the physical and the sensual, and it's perfect. Everything that's physical is imperfect, but like there's this perfect world of ideas. And it's interesting because in John chapter 1, John basically takes that Greek idea and just blows it up, and he says like the logos is with God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It was with God in the beginning. Nothing existed that He did not create. And then it goes and says, and the Word became flesh. The Logos became flesh and dwelt among us. That was one of the weirdest things you would have ever heard in the Greek world. Okay, so I'm trying to give you the sense of context. All right, so understand these Corinthians have grown up all their life going to their grandma's house for cookies on Sunday, and her house is lit with little lamps, oil lamps, where the oil is poured into it. There's a little god who's like half goat or something, and he's got a penis that is bigger than his whole body, and his penis holds the oil, and her grandma lights the tip, and that lights the house, and that's normal life. In Corinth, if you weren't rich enough to afford a woman, a female sex slave 5 times a day, oh, don't worry, we've got the temple of Aphrodite here. We've got all the prostitutes you need. We've got the poor man's solution for this so that you can get on with your philosophy life. Okay, understand, Paul, people thought Paul was a retard for going and trying to preach Christ to these people. The Jews didn't even accept Christ, and they weren't this messed up. Okay, but Paul didn't shy away from it, and the Christian idea and the Jewish idea of the origin of women is so different. And so he's reminding them of that. And see, that's where we have no concept of Pandora. We've got a concept of Eve. And Eve, look how different Eve was from Pandora. Eve was created to be a good thing. That's a big difference. To help. Literally, it's like she was created to help, make things better, not worse. Okay, that's a pretty big difference. Okay, but yeah, here's the thing: if we understand something of that Greek context, and we begin to understand, like, okay, the woman with her hair out, it's a sign of her controlling a man and taking power over a man, especially for these Corinthian Greeks. Okay, so, but if a man is covering his hair, then that's completely missing the point. It's like he thinks so much all the men are, overwhelmed by his beauty. Like every guy in the church is gay for him. That was why he would wear the hat. But the woman would wear the hat as just, her head covering, because her hair is her way of controlling a man, or her way of having authority and power and control over a man. It is her glory. So, of course, in Greek society, women would have gone around topless, or, the toga, just leaving one hanging out, whatevs. Go to the gymnasium or the baths. The baths were really popular because only the rich could afford to bathe regularly, and they had the baths were nice. Nero had, this is not nice. Caligula had them too, I think. Little boys who would swim in his bath and pleasure him under the water, and if they didn't pleasure him correctly, they were thrown off his seaside villa up in northern Italy, off the cliff to be killed. I think they were called the minnows. They were really gay. So the point is, what happened was we embraced that idea, and especially, I'm going to fast forward through time. Women used to wear hats in church, especially here in America. But the problem was that the purpose of wearing the hats was not really the same as why that, and that doesn't mean just to wear a hat, because the hats got more ornate, bigger, prettier, flowers, etc. You had to have a pretty hat. As soon as you're wearing a pretty hat, you're missing the point of this 1 Corinthians 11 passage. The idea was that church is not a place for a woman to control a man and to get a man's attention. The man's attention should be for God. Or everyone's attention should be for God at church. I mean, I think that should be obvious. But today, I mean, we've dropped it because we abused it. So, I mean, I guess we could ask a larger question, well, what should a woman wear? And that's a very large question. I would just give 2 cents, not very well thought out cents. I think it probably has to do with the context in which she is wearing it and what is normal and what is, normally going on. I'll give an example. In the Amazonian rainforest, there's a tribe, and the men wear nothing but like a little grass thing over their. It's just a little bag, and it just goes over their stuff, and I think it ties with a string around the back waist, and everything else is for the world to see. And they wear that and do whatever. They live in the rainforest. If they don't, if you see them with that thing off, they feel really naked and your son. Yeah. Because there is a concept of nakedness. Even among those people. So today you look at, it's very normal for girls to wear shorts that come up pretty high. But if you go back to 1850, then that would have been very scandalous. To show that skin, so women would have worn leggings that came down, to their ankles, even to show ankle. It's like, oh, I saw some ankle, would have been a big deal. Today, I mean, we see girls in shorts. We're not exactly, mind controlled. And so, I'll give another example. A 13-year-old girl I know, typical going to the mall, and she wants to buy this thing that's more racy or whatever, and mama doesn't, want her to wear it, and it's like, what do you think, Ben? And it was just something that showed her belly. She wanted to wear something to school or wherever that showed her belly, and mama was like, no, you can't show your belly. She can wear the short shorts, but she can't show her belly. So there's those lines. Why do those lines exist there? Why can't we, draw them somewhere else? Well, they have to exist somewhere is the point. And the point is where are they in the culture you're in? In other words, as a young lady, what are you trying to express about yourself through what you're wearing? Because ultimately clothes are a form of self-expression. So it's just art, and everybody loves art. Even the people that say they don't. I don't know how many times I've heard. It's always some dude tells me that some art that